And I want you to kind of pay attention to the story so that you can remember the story when we get to the point in the message where you need to know it. There was this guy, and I want to use a name that is not real today just so that I can protect the innocent, as they say. So I'm going to use the name Leroy. And Leroy is a good name to use, so I'm going to use the name Leroy today and tell you this story. But there's this guy named Leroy who had this new dog that he had bought, and it was a wonderful dog, and he loved this dog. And this dog was good to him and his wife, and took care of them, and made sure no one came to their house and broke into their house or done anything. The dog stayed out in the yard mostly, but every now and again Leroy would put him in the truck and take him around, or let him come into the house and let him mess around a little bit in the house. And got to be a real important part of a member of the family, or a member of the family, if you will, in the house. So they got to loving this dog a little bit. Let's call the old dog's name Jake, just to protect the innocence again. And the old dog's name was Jake, and so Leroy, would play with Jake and teach him and throw things and let him fetch and let him bring him back to him and reward him and pat him on the head and rub him, maybe give him a little treat when he would do this. And one day Leroy was standing in his kitchen and he was looking out the window, and old Jake come walking up, and he noticed something in his mouth was dangling, and he wasn't sure what it was. And the old dog came right up on the back porch that Leroy had, kind of has an altar and awning on it, and he sat right there on that porch and looked in this kitchen window where Leroy was standing, and he looked out there, and he finally figured out what it was. It was an old cat, and this old cat was dead, but he remembered his neighbor right next door had this wonderful pet cat that this neighbor just absolutely loved. He cherished just like Leroy cherished his dog Jake. And he looked at the cat and he was thinking, and he was praying a little bit, hoping that the cat was going to be okay, that it was alive, that maybe old Jake just kind of roughed the cat up. But the more he looked at the cat, the more he realized this cat is just absolutely limp. He's not moving, he's not doing anything. And he noticed mud all over the cat, where evidently a horrible task, a horrible tussle had taken place, where this cat had tried to defend himself and couldn't fight against the power of this dog. And he'd wallowed him around in the mud and pushed his head down into the mud, and his hair was all matted up and he had mud all over him and just horrible looking. So Leroy thought, now what am I going to do? This neighbor hadn't been here very long, and this cat is his pride and joy. Every time I see him early in the mornings, he's calling that cat, he's feeding him, giving him milk, taking care of his cat, loving this cat. And he's even told me that how much he admired his cat and how smart his cat was. Said, look, this cat will actually go to the bathroom. Said, you don't need a litter box. He'll go to the bathroom and he'll flush the toilet when he's done. So he's a good cat. I like this cat. I love this cat. Leroy thought, what am I going to do? I can't go over there and tell this man that Jake killed this cat. He might want retaliation or something. He may want me to pay a fortune for this cat, or he may try to do something to my dog. I got to do something, but I got to do something right. I can't be dishonest about it. And then he thought, I got to fix it. Somehow I got to fix it where he don't realize that Jake was the one that tore this cat apart like this and got mud all over his fur and killed him. So he devised a plan. He took the old cat out of Jake's mouth. Jake looked at him like, what are you doing? He wasn't sure what he was doing, so he took the old cat out of Jake's mouth. He took him right into the kitchen where he'd been standing, put him underneath the sink there. The cat was dead, so you didn't have to worry about water and stuff like this. You know what cats don't like water. So he put him in the sink, started watering him down like that. He took some old dishwashing liquid and he squirted it all over the cat. He started rubbing him, kind of washing his hair and fluffing it up a little bit, getting it down into the skin of the cat, and rubbed his belly and rubbing underneath, and around his head, and around the neck and stuff like this. He's done everything he could to make the cat just really, clean. Then he went in there and he got his wife, let's call her name Brenda or something, okay? So he went into the bathroom and he found a hairdryer and he said, well, I'm going to fluff his fur up now. And he started blowing that cat's fur and got it all fluffed up and take his hands like that. Even then, Brenda didn't know this, but Leroy took a brush and started fluffing up that cat's hair that belonged to her, and he's fluffing it up. And that cat looked really good. I mean, that cat looked the best he had ever looked. And because the cat was dead and a little bit of stiffness had set up into its body, he took and was able to put a little smile on the cat's face that would stay. He put that little smile on there and he fluffed him up real good. And he went over and laid the cat on the man's porch, just like the old cat had laid many times before in that same spot. And then he had another plan. He said, well, He might look at him, but he's going to go over there right away and make sure his cat's all right, because he always calls him. I got to do something to make him think that cat's alive for a while. So he went and got him a little tape recorder. He went behind the house and he got the tape recorder and he done like this in it. You know how old cats got that little motor running, and so he done that little imitation of that motor running, and he stuffed it underneath the cat where it looked like the cat was just sitting there going, sleeping or something like this. And all of a sudden Leroy said, now, it looks good. Man's gone, he ain't home. I got the cat fluffed up, he looks very much alive, looks like he's smiling, it sounds like he's alive, he's got the little motor running, he's happy, he's content. I'm just going to go back over to my house like nothing happened. Jake hadn't done nothing, I hadn't done nothing, nothing's wrong. So he went back over to his house. And he was sitting in there. All of a sudden, about a day and a half later, the man came home. He was on a trip. Leroy looked out the window and said, oh my goodness, there he is, and he's holding that cat in his hand. He said, what am I going to tell him? It didn't work. What am I going to tell him? What am I going to tell him? And the man knocked a little harder. Leroy opened the door and said, hey, how you doing? And the man said, I ain't doing too good. Said, we got some sicko in the neighborhood, and I ain't happy about it. Leroy kind of felt guilty, and at this point he knew he had to fess up a little bit. And he said, well, and before he could even admit to what he'd done, the man said, no, 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 don't try to make me feel better, Leroy. We got a sicko in the neighborhood. You know, my cat died 2 weeks ago, and I buried him. Somebody dug him up, cleaned him up, put him on my porch, made him look like he was alive. Said, I don't understand this sicko. What kind of sicko is this in our neighborhood? Sometimes we feel what we decided caused what happened. But it ain't necessarily true in our spiritual lives. Sometimes we feel what we decided caused what happened. And to some degree, yeah, so to some degree that's true. Is it not? Sometimes we can make mistakes and we can do things intentionally that cause things to happen. But sometimes we're innocent, aren't we? We're innocent. For example, when we act intentionally about something that's sinful, then we're guilty. And yes, we need to try to rectify things and make them better and fix them and make things right. But sometimes when we didn't do something, we don't need to try to fix things and make things right. Amen? Amen. And that was the case of Leroy and this dog named Jake. Okay? But then I thought, reality. And I thought about people who intentionally sin. And does God hold us responsible for sins that we didn't intentionally commit? For example, maybe circumstances have brought us to a place where we do knowingly sin, but would not have sinned had circumstances not brought us to this place. In other words, is our heart right with God? And because things become so precious in our lives that we committed a sin. We didn't want to. And we kind of knew that we were going to, and we done it. But we done it based on circumstances that caused us to do it. But then immediately, after we committed that sin, we say, God, I never intended to do that. And now I wished I hadn't done that. God, forgive me. Will God still hold us accountable? What if the sin is a great sin? Not just a minor sin, but a great sin. Something that is horrific. And I found two examples in the Bible. Peter and Judas. What does Peter and Judas have in common? One thing. They both denied Christ. Now Judas went and hung himself, and Judas never felt forgiveness, and Judas felt all the guilt of the sin of denying Jesus Christ. He felt like, I have went too far. In my heart I have denied Him and went too far and can't return. Little did he know, in his heart, had he been right, he would have went back to Jesus and asked for forgiveness, and Jesus would have forgave him. But Judas didn't feel that way. And Judas went out and he hung himself and he committed suicide. Now Peter, on the other hand, came to a place where he had watched them beat Jesus and try Jesus and basically convict Jesus and then sentence Jesus to death. Now, Peter was sitting here and he was watching this after he had just told Jesus, I will fight with you till the death. Now, he had tried to prove this in the Garden of Gethsemane by cutting off Malchus's ear. And it didn't work out. Circumstances made things worse that Peter had done. So Peter now was confused. What is it I'm supposed to do for my Lord? I don't want to deny Him. I want to fight for Him, but when I fought for Him, it seemed like I made matters worse. Now Peter went to where Jesus was being tried. Only a couple disciples done that. They found their way into Jerusalem, and they found to where Jesus was being tried, and they sat and they watched the trial. Then all of a sudden, people started looking at Peter and said, look, you're one of his group. You're one of the people that have been traveling with him. And yeah, I think you deserve a little bit of what he's getting too. Now the circumstances had come to Peter and caused Peter to have a little fear. And Peter said, I don't know him. Done it 3 times, didn't he? And at one point I actually cussed and said, I don't know him. And then, as Jesus told Peter it would happen, the rooster, the cock crowed. And just as the cock crowed, the Bible's pretty clear on Jesus was looking at Peter, and Peter turned and saw the eyes of Jesus to remember what Jesus had told him. Now later we know the story. Jesus went to the grave. He rose again the 3rd day. Indeed he did. He rose again the 3rd day, and then he asked Peter, do you love me? 3 times. Thus forgiving Peter. Judas intentionally sinned. Judas planned something, he carried it out, he done it without seeking forgiveness, and God judged him based on his sin. Peter, on the other hand, got caught up into circumstances that was beyond his control. Kind of like Jake bringing a cat to your door and not knowing what to do. But all of a sudden, Peter is confronted. He's faced with this problem. And he dealt with it in a human way. And God understood. He's scared. And he forgave him. Because his heart was not intentional to set out and deny Christ. Now, sin will be the cause, listen to me, of all problems in your life. Sin will be. No matter if it's intentional, no matter if it's not. It will be the cause of all your problems. Sometimes you get caught up into things. Sometimes it's unintentional. And sometimes it is very intentional on what you're doing. And you're doing it because you don't really have a heart for God. You don't. God knows the difference. And I thought about a man in the Bible that perhaps got caught up into sin, who hadn't really done anything. His name is Job. Job. Job's case, Job in his heart was innocent of all the things of the sin curse that was being placed upon him. In other words, Job did not deserve anything that was taking place as far as sin's curse. And Job would wonder sometimes, what is going on? Why am I going through this? What have I done? Lord, truly have I done anything that has caused this? Should I repent? Should I confess something? Should there be a problem that I don't know about and I need to know about? Job in his heart had done nothing. He was innocent. Yet Job was suffering under sin's curse for some reason. Some reason. God allowed this because Job was of the world in body in the body, not in spirit. In other words, Job's body came from the world. It was part of the world. It is what the world is. But his spirit had left the world. But because his body was attached to the world, his earthly physical body, Job also was allowed to go through sin's curse, just like every person on this earth will be allowed to do. You know, the Bible tells us that the same rain that falls upon the lost will fall upon the born again. The same sun that shines upon the lost will shine upon the born again. And as long as we're on this earth and in our earthly vessels, sin will come into our lives and be destructive in our lives. Now there are preachers who say if you do this, 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 or this, send me money mainly is what they're after, then God's blessings will be upon you forever. Nothing will happen. You won't get sick. You'll be very lucrative as far as your finances. Everything's good. Everything's wonderful. It's a wonderful life. Wrong. As long as we are earthly vessels on this earth, and this earth is cursed with a sin curse, we too, the born again, will have to go through certain things just as Job did. Just as he did in the flesh. Just like we will in the flesh. Job lost everything that he had on this earth. Have y'all ever thought about that? What he had on this earth, everything, he lost it. In other words, it wasn't truly a treasure. How is it then that Job could go on and be positive towards God even when everybody was telling him he had done something wrong and he needed to repent and God was punishing him in some way? How could he be positive knowing that it made sense? God's judgment is on me. Everything that I had on this world is lost. Because in Job's spirit, he wasn't of this world. And the things of this world wasn't the most important thing of all. Job lost everything. And sin's curse can cost us everything. Did you know that? Sin's curse can cost you everything. I think about Christians that Muslims are beheading. But they're beheading an earthly vessel. They're taking that earthly vessel, which we don't really care about, because our spirit and our soul is more important. That's what we live in. That's what we live through. And that's what we'll have to live on forever. Our soul and our spirit, not our body. But this earth and sin's curse, even if you're born again, even when you're innocent, can cost you everything. And God allows it. Job was a very wise man. In fact, if you do research on Job, you'll find out he was noted to be one of the wisest men in all of the East. I believe that there's only two that were wiser than Job. That was Solomon and Jesus Christ himself that's on this earth. Only two people that have ever been on this earth were wiser than Job. He was a very wise man. Job was a very wealthy man. In fact, there are historical records that show that at one time Job was considered to be the most wealthiest man in the East. He had everything you wanted, everything you needed, everything you didn't need, and then some more. He was wealthy. He had everything. But even more importantly, he was respected. People respected and liked him. You know, most men, when they get up into billions and trillions of dollars, people lose respect for them. Oh, they kind of kiss up to them, wanting to get a little something they got. But if Job had been poor or if Job was rich, he had the same respect because he earned it. Because he was a fair man. He was a good man. And people liked him. He was respected. And Job was very well known in the East by everyone who knew of Job to be a very loving family man. He loved his family. He loved his children. He loved his wife. He done everything they could, no matter what their need was. And I'm not talking about just his wife and children. His brothers, his sisters, his cousins, his nephews, descendants, whoever, if they were part of Job's family, they didn't have to worry about anything. Hey, Job, you know we just lost our house. Let me build you another. That's the kind of relative he was. A very loving family man. He took care of his family, his daughters, his sons, everybody. I don't think he spoiled them because he was wise, but he provided through his love for them. And a lot of people say, Brother Marty, I've never really heard this part of who Job is. Chapter 29 of Job, we're going to pick up where Job is sitting down on a chair outside the city wall where Job had went many times, and sat. He went here because people would come up to Job and they would talk to him and get advice, tell him their needs, and he would help them. And this particular time, after all the events had began, Job returned back to this chair, not to meet and greet, but to ponder on his life. What had happened, where he was now, what was going on in his life. Chapter 29, and I'm going to read it all. It says, Moreover, Job continued his parable and said, Oh, that I was in the months past, as in the days when God preserved me. I wish I could have it back, is what he's saying. When his candle shined upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, as I was in the days of my youth, when the secret of God was upon my tabernacle, the secret of God. When the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me. What did he just say here? When my children were about me. They're dead now. They're gone. They're no longer around me. Verse 6. It says, When I washed my steps with butter, and the rock poured me out rivers of oil. When I went out to the gate through the city, and I prepared my seat in the street. This is the very place he's at right now. The young men saw me and hid themselves, and age arose and stood up. The princes refrained talking and laid their hands on their mouth. In other words, royalty would come and they would take advice from Job. They would listen to Job. They didn't even talk, the ones who were kings and princes. It says, The nobles held their peace, and their tongue cleaved to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard me, then it blessed me. In other words, the words I said, turn around and bless what I said. It says, And when the eye saw me, it gave witness to me. I wasn't a hypocrite. People knew me. People knew who I was. I didn't play games. Because I delivered the poor that cried, and the fatherless, and him that had none to help him. The blessing of him that was ready to perish came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe, a diadem, or a turban around my head, if you will. I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and the cause which I knew not, I searched out. I helped people. If they had a problem, I would help them. I would find out what it would take to help them. Verse 17. And I break the jaws of the wicked, and pluck the spoil out of his teeth. I said, I shall die in my nest. I shall multiply my days as the sand. Now when Job in verse 18 said, I shall die in my nest, do you know what he meant by this? In other words, my life is good. Things are well. I have a home. I have children. I have grandchildren. I have things that I have worked for around me. This is how I'm going to die. I'm going to die happy. I want to die with all the things that I worked so hard to have, and the things that I have given, and it's been given back to me 10 times fold. I'm going to die with these things. This is going to be wonderful. This is the way I'm going to leave the earth. Remember, he's reflecting back, because reality has come to him and he's lost everything. He's reflecting back. Verse 19 says, My root was spread out by the waters, and the dew lay all night upon my branch. My glory was fresh in me, and my bow was renewed in my hand. Unto me men gave ear, and waited, and kept silence at my counsel. People listened to me, I was wise. After my words they spake not again, and my speech dropped upon them. And they waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the latter rain. They wanted more. In other words, I gave them advice and they wanted more. If I laughed on them, they believed it not. I wasn't a hypocrite. I didn't make fun of people and I didn't use people. And the light of my countenance they cast not down. In other words, it was precious to them. I looked good to them. I chose out of their way and set chief and dwelt as a king in the army, as one that comforted mourners. Sound like a pretty good life the man has set and reflected upon, didn't it? Had everything and lost all that he spoke about in chapter 29. Job now sits outside the town, as he spoke about in the previous verse, reflecting how good life was. But you know what could have stood out to me? It said, then I said, I shall die in my nest. Shall die in my nest with all that I had worked for. Job was hoping generations would come. Grandkids would be around him and hang around the house, and grow up and have the same kind of spirit in them that he had. They would be wise, they would be giving, they would be fair to people. In other words, where I had planted myself, I wanted to be surrounded by children and grandchildren. But now all my children have been destroyed. For some reason, God allowed the devil to control the weather and blow the rooftop in on my children and kill every one of them. And I ain't got nothing. Nothing. Folks, it's very hard to lose a child. And I hope you never do. But to lose all your children in one shot would be horrible. Horrible. And Job's reflecting. He's sitting outside the fence and he's got big boils on him and he's scraping those boils off of rocks because they're getting so big that he's hideous looking. Looks like a monster or a creature out of some horror film perhaps. He's sitting here trying to scrape them just to hold some kind of dignity to look like himself again a little bit, even if it's with open cut sores on him. Because the boils are covering up his complexion and everything that he is his countenance. And when you look at him, you go, oh. He's just trying to take care of himself best he can. But the devil's working him over good. And it's hard for him to win because God's allowing this to happen. But Job never got mad at God. He said, what are you doing? And cursed him. Not one time. Not a single time. When Job realized while he was reflecting in chapter 29 God's goodness, he realized God's goodness is better than sin's curse. You know, that happened only one other time in the Bible, where the Bible tells us specifically someone realized God's goodness, then sin's curse, and then realized they would love to go back to God's goodness. You know who it was? Adam. He was in the Garden of Eden. Everything was great. Everything was wonderful. But then suddenly, sin's curse came upon him. He didn't like it. He confessed his sins. He repented of it. And he wanted to go back to where he was with God. And Job is doing the very same thing in chapter 29 of Job. Oh, if I could have those days back. I don't really understand what's going on here. But I know God's still good. And His goodness is a lot better than sin's curse. Job realized God was where he wanted to be. He realized this. God, you're over there and I'm over here. I don't understand it. We're separated. He realized God was good where he was, even though he was under attack. God had not changed one bit. God was still good. How can a man understand this unless he understands God and not blame God? God was not to blame, and Job knew it. Somehow, deep inside, he knew God cannot be the blame of what's going on with me. This has to be the work of the devil. The devil hates, he defies, he's angry, he's selfish, he's wicked, he's evil. That's who the devil is. God's not that way. So God can't be the blame for what's going on inside of me and around me and of me. It has to be the devil. It has to be. Job knew. Also, we have a choice of God's goodness or sin's curse. Job was sitting here reflecting back on God's goodness, trying to figure out, how do I go back? God ain't changed. Something's happened. I don't know what it is. But God's still good. Always will be. And he was trying to reflect back and remember the goodness of God and wanting to go back. But folks, here's the problem. Satan wouldn't let Job go easily. In other words, when everything that could happen has happened, the devil had one more little thing that he wanted to punish Job through. Because Job was in the flesh, remember? And flesh has a sin's curse. What did he do? He sent Job's friends to accuse him. His closest allies, the ones that he thought truly he could trust and believe in. Just like Israel used to be able to do with the United States of America when we turned our back on it. Allies. Shame on us. But Job's friends turned their back on him. And they said, Job, you've messed up. You're doing wrong. Something's wrong. God is mad at you, Job. Get your life right. You've done something. You blasphemed. You thought something evil. Something wicked in your heart's going on. Or maybe you committed some secret sin that nobody knows about and you need to get it right. Get it right, Job. I'm telling you, get it right. And maybe God will smile on you again. And Job knew the whole time. I've done nothing. That's an awful place to be, isn't it? I've done nothing. What you're saying makes sense. But I hadn't done anything. So to me it doesn't apply. And I've got to figure this out all on my own. Somehow. Satan wouldn't let go easy. He said, no, I'm not going to let you go. Now I'm going to send your friends to accuse you. Job was sitting outside the town, and they weren't seeking his counsel now. They were screaming at him, pointing their fingers at him, accusing him falsely. Just like they did Jesus for us. And to make matters worse, Job was sitting there probably with his hands sitting there like that, pondering, blue, depressed, hurting, begging inside God to give him some relief. But he noticed someone was walking towards him out of his peripheral vision. And within about a half a second, he knew who it was. It's my wife. Maybe she's concerned. Maybe she's going to bring me a rag that I can put on these bowls. It's cool. I can comfort. She's a little concerned about me. I've been out here for hours. She walks in front of him. She looks at Job up and down. Are you still retaining your dignity? Why don't you cuss God down? Turns around and walks off. He's lost everything. Even his wife's respect for him. When the wife tells you, why don't you just cuss God down? You're very close to giving up now. What do I need to go on and do? My kids are dead and my friends hate me. Obviously, my wife hates me. I've lost everything. And God, I've done nothing. Nothing. I don't get it. Maybe I should give up. But then, again, he remembers who God is. And the goodness of God. And the blessings that God had given him and his wife for many decades before this occurred. Setting out the gate, reflecting, thinking. And when his wife said this, as she turned to walk away, Job retaliated. So maybe she done him a favor. Maybe she brought the fight back into Job. I don't think she meant to, but maybe she did. Sometimes when a man's down, that's when he's at his best, isn't it? Chapter 2 of Job, verse 9, it says, Then said his wife unto him, Doest thou still retain thy integrity? Renounce, curse God, and die. And Job sat there and looked at her a minute. All of a sudden this little fire hit him. Something came inside of his heart. And it shot out of his mouth. He told her, No, whoa, wait a minute. Don't you turn around and walk away. You listen to me. It says, But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God? And shall we not receive evil? And all this did not Job sin with his lips. We're in this world. We're earthly vessels. Sin is on this earth. There's a sin curse. God has been good to us a long, 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 long time. Yeah, we're overdue for some of the sin curse that's on this earth. Not that we have deliberately in our hearts committed sin, but circumstances has made us imperfect. Were there times, Leroy, that Job might have got a temper a little bit? I'm sure he did. It shows it right here in verse 10. Was there times that maybe he was a little contrite early in the morning, hadn't had his morning tea or coffee, whatever they drank back then? Just wait a minute, I'll talk to you in a minute. I ain't ready to talk right now. Stumped his toe coming in and somebody laughed at him. What's so funny? I don't know. I wasn't there. But we can fill in the blanks, can't we? I don't think he was absolutely perfect. There's only one that was, and that was Jesus Christ. And Job had flaws. And he realized, no matter how minor the flaw was, we're part of the sin curse. Look, don't you understand? God has blessed us. He's been good to us for a long time. And now we're just suffering just a little bit. Nothing's happened to you outside of losing everything. But look at me. I'm supposed to be the leader of this family. And I've been made a mockery. Don't you understand this? Stick with me, honey. Stick with me. Maybe God will be good to us again. Job 1:22, it says, All this Job sinned not, nor charged or blamed God foolishly. Job realized if sin, listen to me, if sin was to run its course, its natural course of destruction upon everything on this earth, he realized one thing. You know what he realized? God is still God. God is still God. What does that mean? The God who gave joy gives joy no matter where you're at. He can retain it. He can. The God who gave joy gives joy. The God who makes peace gives peace no matter where you're at, no matter what's going on. Chapter 2, verse 10, what did he say? Look, we've had it blessed. We've been blessed. We've had the blessings of God. Yes, some things have come upon us. Some horrible, horrible things to deal with. And in my life, I've lost homes. I've lost a child. I mean, yeah, some horrible things. But I can promise you, God has returned the joy and the peace in my life. And Job somehow a true born-again Christian, one that really truly is following Christ, somehow knows God is still God. The God that gives peace and joy, gave it, gives it. Job, who was wise, knew that, yes, God somehow restores. He restores things. Job received in his spirit and in his soul, in the very end of all this, regeneration. He was regenerated. In other words, God put him back to where he was and then some. Not the devil, not his own philosophies, not his own plans, but God done it. And he knew all along God could do it. In your Bibles, quickly go to chapter 42 of Job. And if you know the book of Job, you know this is the best part. This is the end. The end chapter. The end conclusion. After God said, now, you went through all this, let me show you who I am again. I said, again. Job chapter 42, verses 11 to 17 says this. Then came there unto him all his brethren, and all his sisters, and all they that had been of his acquaintance before. Remember before. And did eat bread with him in his house. And they behomed, or basically they consulted him and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and everyone an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than the beginning. The beginning than before. What Job had before was not near as good as what Job has now. Remember the hard times, the rough times, the difficult times, when we as a majority give up on God. Job did not, and received more than the beginning, it says. For he had 14,000 sheep, and 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, which a yoke is 2, so that's 2, and 1,000 she-asses. And he had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. So he even had more children. This old feller's doing pretty good, ain't he? Sitting outside the wall, and all of a sudden, boom, everything's restored, everything's good, his health's good again, children are back, money's back, everything's going good. God done this. God restored this. It says, and he called the name of the first Jemima, okay, and the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Karen Hapka, okay, and these names do have meanings, and I don't have time to go in them, but look up the meanings of these names that he gave them. But look at verse 15. It says, and in all the land were no women found so fair as the daughters of Job. And their father gave them an inheritance among their brethren. You know, there's something about your little girl. You got a daughter, or something about her. Especially when she's charismatic, she's beautiful, she's articulative, she's very obedient, she's kind to you. A little girl can get a lot from daddy if she plays her cards right. Amen? Y'all know that. There's something about them, I don't know what it is. I mean, the boys can come up and ask, but when the little girl comes up asking a certain way, she pretty much gets what she wants. Y'all don't believe me? Come here a minute, Sarah. Does Poppy give you a lot because you asked for it? That's my proof. Go ahead and sit down. Just because she asked for it. For those watching on YouTube around the world, it's my daughter Sarah. She gives me what I want, so I give her what she wants. I want that little girl. And I want her happy. And if I give what she wants, she's happy. And that's the way Job was. They were special to it. So he gave them actually more inheritance than he gave his sons, because they were going to furnish him, like the sons in a way, a bloodline of grandchildren that Job wanted in the nest. Never said he wanted to be in the nest. Now, more than likely, Job told his daughter, said, look, you like that old boy, you can marry him, I'll take care of y'all. But y'all got to build some houses right in this area here. Now, I'm sure the sons probably, they move where they want to, they go where they want to. But most of them kind of build around the house. He already knew that. But I don't know boys taking my daughters to, somewhere across the ocean somewhere. I won't stay here. So he was real good to them. He petted them. He kind of punched, gave them what they wanted. I want y'all to build right over here. I'm going to give you 40 acres over here. That old boy that you married, he ain't all that great. So, I can't give you too much, but I can give you a lot more. Just hang around. And they did. He loved them. Let's read on. Verse 16. It says, after this lived Job. How about this? After this, not completely. After this lived Job 140 years and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even for generations. So Job died being old and full of days. In other words, he wanted grandchildren. Let me ask y'all something. Now, back in those days, girls would have children at 15, 16, 17 years old. Now imagine 140 years, every 15, 16 years you're getting grandchildren. Wow. There was a slew of grandchildren, just like Job wanted. God restored that. Job received of God, by God's desire to restore Job. And today, about to finish, Jesus is still God's choice to restore you. To restore you. Come back. God has already made you His child because you're made in the image of Him. But to be adopted into the family of God, again, to separate from your sin where you wavered away from God, you have to come through Jesus Christ. There is no other way. It's not Buddha, it's not Muhammad, it's no other way, it's not works. It's by Jesus going to a cross, shedding His blood for your sin, paying your price so that you can come as God will accept you, holy and righteous, as Jesus is holy and righteous. He went to that cross, He died for you, so that you would have the choice to remove yourself from the sin's curse and be in God's blessings, no matter what. He rose again the third day. He lives, He lives, He lives to represent you. He walks, He talks, acts, reacts. He's not in that grave, and He's not left there. If He is, show me the body and prove it, and I promise you I'll believe in you. You can't do it. It's impossible. He rose again. He lives to represent you. Put your faith in Him. Trust in Him. And I promise you, you'll never regret it.